Please join me in welcoming Mr. Glenn Kessler to the podium.
Thank you so much, Rahul and Carolyn, for that kind introduction. And in particular, I want to honor Dr. Glazer for his leadership at TJ for the past 11 years. I'm very honored to speak at your graduation. Two of my children, Andre, class of 2011, and Hugo, class of 2015, are graduates of TJ. I know what a terrific education you received, and I also know how hard you worked. 40 years ago, I was sitting at my own high school graduation, wondering what the future would bring. My graduation gift was something called a typewriter. At the time, there were only 3 national television networks, CBS, NBC, and ABC. The national news aired just once a day for a half hour each night. Magazines such as Time and Newsweek summarized the week's news. The weekend before I graduated from high school, a movie called Star Wars was released. Maybe you've heard of that. And 5 days after I graduated, a tiny company called Apple began selling one of the first personal computers, the Apple II. At the time, it was not considered nearly as cool as the Radio Shack TRS-80, which, believe it or not, outsold it 5-1. Now, I was one of those odd people who always knew what they wanted to do when they grew up. When I was in 5th grade, I decided I wanted to be a newspaper journalist. And I stuck to that plan through thick and thin. But little did I know that the Apple II computer would help lead a technological revolution that would upend and nearly destroy the industry in which I had always dreamed of working. And little did I know that my treasured graduation gift of a typewriter would soon be tossed in the trash can, replaced by a computer. When I started my career, there were no television websites. Cable TV was in its infancy. Readers, even reporters, did not have instant access to transcripts or YouTube videos of news briefings or congressional hearings. Expanded access to information for both readers and reporters has many advantages. I could not write the fact-checker column on a daily basis without the vast resources of the internet. But these technological changes have come at a cost. Newspapers and the evening shows used to provide Americans with a common point of reference. Now Americans increasingly are sorted into ideological cul-de-sacs, able to decide if they want their news slanted left or right. A critical question which you face, which we all face, is whether additional access to news and faster dissemination of information is better informing Americans or making them increasingly intolerant of other points of views. Tweets are no substitute for reasoned discourse. In the 2016 election, people allowed their Facebook feeds to become polluted with fake news that matched their political inclinations. The internet has helped open a world of information and facts for Americans. But that freedom is wasted if Americans are content only to absorb facts and political analyses that match their blue or red political inclinations. We seem to have gotten richer with information, but poorer in knowledge and understanding. Now, we can't go backwards, of course. We can only forge a responsible path forward, and in large part, that will depend on you. Now, given the rigor of TJ, I'm certain many of you will get to college and find yourselves wondering why you have so much free time on your hands. But that's actually a good thing. TJ has a national reputation. Depending on the survey, it's the best or one of the best high schools in the country. There's a high school in Texas I simply will not mention. You have had amazing opportunities in high school, and now many of you are going to go off to college, and frankly, many of you are going to blow it. Now, don't get me wrong. Academically, I don't think college will be a problem for almost all of you. But too many students these days go to college thinking only of their future careers. Now, that's understandable. College is very expensive, and many of you or your families are taking out loans to pay for it. But college is not about careers. It's about learning. So this is a commencement speech, so of course I'm going to offer some advice about going to college. what I call the 3 don'ts. Don't let education get in the way of your college experience. Don't worry about your major. Don't be afraid of failure. And let me explain. First, don't let education get in the way of your college experience. For many of you, college will be your first time living away from home. You're going to have to wash your laundry. You're going to manage your finances, maybe. You're going to organize your schedule. And you're going to meet new people with vastly different experiences, strengths, and weaknesses. You will, in fact, meet people who are smarter than you and are better at skills that you thought you had mastered. You're going to learn a lot in class, but you're actually going to learn even more from your peers. Late-night discussions over beers or coffee will linger more in your mind than the professor's lecture, especially if you're hanging out with your friends until 3 a.m. and the lecture was at 9 a.m. Now, obviously, you shouldn't ignore academics, but going to college is also about freedom, the freedom to experiment, the freedom to explore, the freedom to spread your wings, and you'll have to learn how to manage that freedom. Second, and this is really important, don't worry about your major. After your first job, not a single person is going to care about your major. The people who hire you for your first job probably won't care either. For the next 4 years, this is your opportunity to study anything you want. Once you go off to graduate school or go off to work, that option is going to be closed. So if you study science and technology, take courses in art history, English literature, film, music theory, anything to broaden your mind. Too many people think they need to go to college to get a job, when in fact, they need to go to college to learn how to think critically and creatively. That's what will help you get a job and excel at it. My father had a degree in chemical engineering, but he became a successful executive at Procter & Gamble because he was such a good writer, even though English was not his first language. Employers want people who are well-rounded and know how to express themselves clearly and thoughtfully. My son, Andre, took 3 poetry courses at MIT. Ms. Lieberchow, one of TJ's great teachers, had inspired him to love poetry. The classes were very small for MIT, just 5 or 6 students, which was a welcome relief from some of the bigger classes he had to take to fulfill MIT's graduation requirements. Andre also graduated with a math degree, even though he was effectively a computer science major. But he just didn't want to waste time on an introductory course that was required of all computer science majors at MIT. And it certainly didn't matter at SpaceX, where he now works as a software engineer. Let's face it, you cannot expect your major alone will prepare you for your first job. What will matter more are the summer internships, which is where you acquire training, expertise, and contacts. My other son, Hugo, is a film major at Wesleyan University, but he worked at Apple as a software engineer after his freshman year and is back at Cupertino. He's back at Cupertino right now this summer. Ultimately, what will matter for Apple is the work he does for them, not necessarily what he studied in college. I was a history major at Brown University. I didn't take any journalism courses there, and I can assure you that no employer ever asked me what my major was in college. I also took 5 art history classes in college, knowledge that still serves me well every time I walk into a museum. And finally, don't be afraid of failure. As high school graduates, you may not have had much experience with failure. In our society today, failure is considered a negative. Nobody likes a loser. But here's the truth. You'll learn much more from your failures than your successes. If you have not failed at something, it means you haven't taken a chance. It means you have not pushed yourself hard enough or pushed the envelope far enough. Every successful person has a history of failures. Steve Jobs is a good example. But these leaders ultimately succeeded because they learned from their mistakes and misjudgments. You need to learn how to be self-critical and self-reflective. Early in my career, I wrote an article about a Wall Street executive that resulted in a threatened lawsuit against my news organization. My writing was not precise, allowing readers to make false assumptions. It was an embarrassing failure that might have cost me my job. In fact, my company had to pay a substantial sum to avoid a protected legal battle. But it also taught me a lesson about the importance of precision and accuracy, one that I've never forgotten. The world is moving at such a fast pace these days that everyone will lose their balance at some point. You may not remember how many times you fell when you tried to learn how to walk. Your parents can tell you, but it was a lot. You are here today because you had a passion to learn, but you need to have a passion for life. You need to get involved, whether it's your university, your community, or your religious institution. It's too easy to stay focused on yourself, especially in college, while losing sight of the world at large. If your nose is always on the grindstone, you're never going to notice what's happening around you. Take a moment and smell the flowers and help figure out how to make the world a better place. You've all been good students. Now please, be good students of life. Congratulations to the class of 2017.